This is the Leadership in Insurance podcast, brought to you by FinPro Search Partners.
Insurance companies are businesses and they need to look for the long term and be sustainable.
We went from 0 to 1 and now it's going from 1 to 100.
Insurance as a concept, as a kind of service, is brilliant. The execution is what we're looking at now.
I think the companies that are going to succeed are the ones that are going to understand and master the art of intent.
When we talk about innovation, we lean too heavily to think about technology and we don't think about creating a culture of innovation.
I think innovation is essentially continuous improvement of existing processes and platforms and product.
Right? It's got to be easy. It's got to be seamless.
Hello and welcome to the Leadership in Insurance podcast. I'm your host, Alex Bond, and I'm very lucky to be joined by a friend of mine, friend of FinPro, Josh Butler, CEO of CompScience. Josh, welcome. How are you?
Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's one of those funny ones where I'm thinking, why haven't we done this before? I think it's always the people that you kind of know and see at things that you end up going, oh, we've not done this yet. So I've always enjoyed your company. I've always enjoyed your thoughts on the industry. So looking forward to this. And, you know, it makes you a moderate veteran, the age of CompScience in relative terms as well. So I think you've got lots to share. But before I dive in, I've got the advantage of knowing you, but just for the folks at home, great to introduce yourself and obviously CompScience.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me. So Josh Butler, founder, CEO of CompScience. CompScience is really a company built on a mission of preventing 1 million injuries over the next 10 years through 2035. My background, I don't come from the insurance industry originally. I think of myself as a computer scientist and a software product guy. Been in Silicon Valley for the last 17 years, and most recently before this in self-driving cars. But the real inspiration for CompScience came from when a personal family member had an accident on a construction site, and the process of recovery and honestly, eventually, kind of his disability was really what inspired me to take what I was doing in self-driving cars with computer vision and using like the latest AI to understand how to get people safely from point A to point B, and really apply that to workplace safety and prevention. So that's how we got to where we are, and just excited to be a part of I think one of the greatest transformations in the industry that the industry's ever experienced. So happy to be here today, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, not at all. Thanks for coming on. Yeah, that founding journey's really interesting, and I think it's a really good reminder of the connection between, we talk about insurance and insurtech as this kind of almost like nebulous thing that happens outside of the real world, and the attachment to making people's lives better, providing financial security in difficult times. I think sometimes lost just in the conversations we have. I don't think it's lost on anyone that works in it, but that really personal story I think is interesting. Obviously, you didn't come from insurance. You were a tech founder before. Workers' comp makes sense from your kind of personal background. But I was kind of interested to dig into, and I'm sure this is like, this would almost be an endless segment, but what surprised you most about insurance once you were sort of inside the belly of the beast?
Sure. I mean, I guess one of a couple of things. One was just how little good data underwriters have to work with when they're deciding what the right price is for, especially, we're in workers' comp, specifically in workers' comp. I mean, I think it's pretty well known among underwriters that the data they're underwriting on is thin. It's very thin, especially in mid-market and smaller, where the claims don't really tell the full story. And then the supplementals and the applications, they leave out a lot of the detail. And that's why two different underwriters could price the risk at like a 2x spread practically, with good reason. So there's very, very little data there. Something has to change here. We have to have we need to give underwriters a better, a much richer view of what it is they're underwriting. And I think that's a big part of what makes us special is that we're bringing to the table completely new data sets. Where my background in computer vision is really what made it possible to bring really the richest data set you can imagine, which is real-time video straight from the operation to process that scalably, which really wasn't possible until the last few years with the latest LLM models, VLM models, and just much, much cheaper compute, and make that available for underwriters to make better decisions. And it doesn't have to be, you don't have to do that much better. A 2-point improvement in your loss ratio can have a massive impact on profitability for carriers. So we fundamentally believe that bringing these new data sources to the table for underwriting will transform the economics of the carriers we work with, but also can really change the relationship. I mean, I guess the second point I want to make about what was surprising to me was just how little most carriers often do to improve safety and prevent. Um, it's not to say that they don't want to. They certainly do often send like a loss control professional on site to inspect and maybe provide a little report. But it's maybe once a year that they're able to go on there for most mid-market and smaller accounts, the ones that need it most, honestly. So the context they really have is very limited, and the impact they're able to have is quite limited. In fact, I was kind of surprised to see just how little faith loss control reps that I talk to have in their ability to drive change. I think that they often see themselves as more like a sales rep, as opposed to a consultant who can really drive change. So that's something we really believe we can change. And I think you talk to loss control reps here at CompScience, and they're powered up. I mean, they know the change they can drive, largely because they're able to back their recommendations with data, not just back to the claims, but to specific things they can show in the video. And when you start to show, like, here's like 12 examples of, I don't know, someone climbing like 15 feet up on your racks, like that, it's hard to ignore that, right? And our customers are really excited to see that. In fact, it's it's not that people don't want to provide a safe work environment. It's not that they don't want to keep people from getting hurt. Like they're usually friends, and they know each other's families often. And these are communities, right? And they're all this part of the same community. Everyone wants to create a safe work environment, but they're often not empowered, and they kind of lack maybe the data to back why an investment has to happen, or why a training has to happen, or why we need to like drive change. And that's really kind of what we help with. So, so we're changing the sort of what it means to be a loss control rep, and we're also changing kind of what it means to be that sort of accidental safety person in the middle market who might be in the HR/safety role, and helping them be so much more effective.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, I think one of the things that's quite challenging about commercial insurance, particularly in that small mid market or larger, is actually building a relationship with your customer, like actually building a value add relationship. And so much of it is done at arm's length. And like you say, they get some largely sweepingly inaccurate data. The interesting about the loss control piece and particularly the area that you work in is that you are able to build a value added part of the insurance. It's like, we're going to help you get better as a risk, which is better for us from an underwriting perspective. And if the worst happens, we're also going to have your back, and we're going to pay those claims as well. So it's a really interesting. It's not a development.
It's a deeper relationship.
It's a deeper relationship.
We really are transforming that relationship, and it's. I think that's one reason that other carriers haven't been able to jump on this as quickly as we have. Is like, you're really kind of rebuilding the contract from the bottom up. Like our customers do provide a lot more data to us, a lot more, confidential um, you know, data, potentially trade secrets, even in the video that they're sharing with us. They do it because they believe in the value of what we're offering them. Um, Whereas traditionally, like, it's often more of an arm's length relationship, like you're talking about. Like, you don't want your carrier to know everything about your operation because you're a little scared. What if they find out some of the things that we know that we're working on, we're not proud of? Well, our customers are sharing all that and more. And it's a really important, like, in order to get them comfortable doing that, there has to be a clear value exchange. So we have to be able to show them, when you work with us, we're going to drive down your injury rates by a quarter or more. And that's going to have a
Yeah.
massive impact on not just the human impact, but we're going to make you more competitive. You're going to be structurally more competitive, especially in the markets, in the verticals that we target, like
Yeah.
manufacturing, construction, food processing, where workers' comp is a big cost for them. If we can
Mhm.
drive that down by 20-30%, that makes them fundamentally more competitive, and they can invest those dollars in R&D or growth or whatever.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. We're seeing it across insurance in different lines where we can add value add, and more importantly, just not looking at insurance as the be all and end all. It's like that risk reduction and that overall kind of management of risk and insurance.
Hmm.
Jumping slightly, it's a huge advantage having you on with your background, computer science, computer vision. But I was struck by the conversation that we had the other week where we were talking about you know, how you've basically had to look at what's coming in with agentic AI, LLMs, etc.
Yeah,
And you said essentially you've had to kind of almost like rebuild
yeah,
using LLMs, agentic AI.
yeah,
You've really gone all in as a business. You told me from top down. What
yeah.
convinced you to go in all in, and what's most fundamentally changed about what your product can
Hmm.
do? And then obviously we might talk about
Yeah,
the sort of wider environment of CompScience.
yeah. So this is a fun conversation, and it's honestly something that's got me super jazzed up and got our whole team like super excited about the next few
Yeah,
years here, because now everybody's a builder.
yeah,
So there's a couple of things that are happening. One, um, when we started the company, the development process for building computer vision models was very laborious. You had to find a few hundred examples of some object in the image, have someone label it very manually with a bounding box and say, this is an example of that, and this is an example of not that. And then you'd do an extensive training process and do that for each and every kind of object you wanted to track. It was very expensive and very slow to do it. So you'd end up with like 10, 15, 20 different objects you could detect. Activities were very, very challenging because you have to track them across uh, the temporal dimension, meaning like across multiple frames. And it kind of multiplied the complexity of the problem. But sometime about like 2 years ago, as ChatGPT and Anthropic's Claude and Gemini came out with all of their new models, um, we've seen a dramatic shift in what it takes to build a computer vision model that can detect basically anything you ask it to detect with relatively good accuracy. Um, and it's not like it all works straight out of the box, but when you couple it with the data, the labeled data that we have now, um, and you create kind of what we call a compound AI system that does some sort of cross checks to eliminate a lot of the hallucinations, you can basically prompt it now. You can say like, you're a safety inspector, and like, identify all the OSHA hazards that you see here, and it really the output looks like basically higher level thinking. Um, in other words, we can be much more comprehensive in the risks that we can detect and flag and score. And we can roll out new verticals much, much more quickly than we ever could before. And that's sort of fundamentally changed the pipelines that we're building that understand real world risk with like the richest, I've said before earlier, this is like the richest data source you could imagine. It is basically it's a very large data set. Video is extremely large and in terms of like gigabytes, but it's like you can see across the entire organization, across maybe like 20, 30, 40 cameras, everything that's happening, right? And now the computer can kind of understand at a fundamental level the relationship between objects and activities and things that might be risks to people, right? So
Mm.
that's one level, the sort of world model that transformed the way we build the way we understand the physical environment. But there's something else that happened as well. You have Claude and Cursor and OpenAI Codex. These are tools that help builders build faster. And what I think is so exciting to everyone here is not just that the engineers move faster, but like literally everyone can build now.
Yeah.
One of the challenges, one thing we had to do to make this really work is we need to give people an environment, a box, like a sandbox, where they can get access to the raw data they need, like data about, maybe deal pipeline or data about the risks we've identified, data about the submissions, the insurance applications that are coming in. And when you provide that in the sandbox, then anyone can build an interface, an app, even auto draft emails to respond to broker questions, things like that. And it doesn't just mean we can move faster, but I think we build better when you let the end user actually ask for what they want and get a quick turnaround. And there's a lot to unpack here about what it takes to do this well, but it is I really do believe that we've seen even in the last like maybe 6, 8 months, I think a major transition in how we think of what makes us special. It's not just that unique data set anymore. It's also the fact that we're a company where everyone's building. We're a
Yep.
company where everyone's building software that's so much more on point than you'd get out of the sort of traditional waterfall development process. And
Mm.
that's something that is going to be fundamentally a differentiator, a sustainable competitive advantage versus like your kind of more, I don't know, the larger like
Mm.
legacy carriers out there that are going to have a lot more trouble kind of adopting so quickly these new technologies.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, one thing we touched on when we spoke about this, there's everyone's a builder thing, thinks
Mhm.
interesting, sandboxing the data as well, really, really smart. But how do you make that cultural shift, like internally, to sort of get people to
Yeah,
embrace that and
yeah,
not be frightened of it?
yeah. It took me. I spent a lot of time thinking about this, and you know where it started? It started with me like in a bathrobe, with a on a Saturday with my coffee, and I think I woke up early one morning and just kind of was a little bored and started playing around with Claude,
Mm.
and I started building stuff on my own, and
Hmm.
and I think this is an important piece. I think this is really important. It's like um, leaders shouldn't just expect other people to start building. Like, don't you shouldn't just ask others to start building. In fact, we're seeing CTOs from like major Fortune 500 companies now taking IC roles, individual
Yeah.
contributor roles in like major AI companies. And why are they doing that? Because they're unshackled for the first time. They recognize, I actually can be a builder here, and in a sense, maybe I have certain insights. I understand the business in ways that I don't expect someone earlier in their career or without the broader context I have about the business to understand it. So I think it starts top down with the leaders actually getting their hands dirty and doing it themselves to understand what it takes to make this work. Some of the things that I recognized in doing this are one, deployment is challenging. How do you actually deploy something so it's stable and so everyone can use it? So we had to build an environment where people can deploy. You have to have access to data. One thing I recognized is, okay, I have some data. I can upload like spreadsheets of data, but no, we need to have like live data available for people in these sandboxes so that they can actually deploy something that's valuable. Um, so I think that's a big one. Is like you do it yourself, you feel it, you feel the pain points, you actually like you build something, and I'll tell you, people will get excited when you ship something. And then the second thing we did, which I brought from my sort of startup background is hackathons.
Yeah.
We've in my former days, you'd like about 6, 7 o'clock at work at night after work, you'd roll out a keg and tell people they have about 18 hours to build something, whatever they want to build. The only rule is it can't be for it can't be your normal job.
Okay.
And it brings people together. We do these regularly now where we have underwriters participate, connecting with they build little tiny teams, pods with like an engineer, a data scientist, an underwriter, and they work for 12 hours. And after that, they've actually got a product that is pretty incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Like for instance, email triage. We had an underwriter build an email triage system where it's constantly scanning his inbox to see what deals are coming in, evaluating the completeness of of the information, the fit, and even auto drafting some potential responses if there's like missing information or something, and then scoring which of those emails he should focus on first. So that kind of stuff is incredible. I mean, it would be months, probably, or maybe years before that would hit our roadmap.
Yeah.
If we were gonna try to figure out what to build there, but he was able to do this in a few hours.
Mm.
So it really just to sort of summarize what the hackathon does is it changes the mindset of everyone to be thinking of not just reacting to the tools and the products that they're using, but more like getting creative and getting and participating in and 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 starting to think about, okay, what should I be asking for, um, and even building it themselves. And that really builds an incredible cohesion across the teams and much more engagement when we are building together with like underwriters, for instance.
Mm. Well, on that people focused piece, and by the way, I love a hackathon, but I don't know how my
Yeah.
team would react if I said you're going to stay 12 hours behind her the working day. But yeah, I mean, I shared with you. I mean, joking aside, I
Uh-huh.
mean, we did have a day where we were looking at what are the
Hmm.
problems that we face, what can we build, and like Josh is the newest member of our team, and he built,
Good name.
basically there's certain metrics we look for when working with new clients, and there's certain kind of information we know suggests it's hiring going to happen. Well,
Hmm.
he just built something to track that, and just off his own back and said, do you think it's
Yeah.
any good? And it was pretty, it's functional, it worked, and now it's a process of refining, and that's just one solution. But
Yeah.
like you
Yeah.
say, if we'd waited for me, if we'd waited for, we could be waiting forever. So
Totally.
it's really it allows you to delegate the authority to kind of evolve the business.
Hmm.
What I wanted to ask you about this is like now engineering has fundamentally changed, as we know, or certainly is going to
Yeah.
be.
Yeah.
And we're talking about you enabling, others and bringing the teams together. But has it kind of has it shift like who you hire, like how your teams
Hmm.
are structured, what good looks like in people you're hiring, like how has that kind of impacted that sort of side of it, the employment side?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so I think there's a couple points I'd like to make here. One is, well, okay, 2, 3 years ago when this shit was just hitting the market,
Mhm.
I think there were a lot of engineers that were very concerned about their jobs,
Mhm, mhm,
and maybe there probably still are some. Um, I think there are some that probably should be concerned.
yeah.
Um, but if you think about it from my point of view, as CEO of a startup, if I can get 5x the productivity out of an engineer, I'm much more inclined to hire more, not less, actually.
Yeah.
Because this is a growth startup. This is about how fast can you grow. And if I'm
Mhm,
getting 5 times the value out of this part of the organization, I'm going to actually ramp that up.
mhm.
Um, it's not a, um, uh, what's the word? It's not a fixed pie, right?
Yeah.
So that's one. Two, this favors. I think there's a couple types of engineers this favors. Um, One is it favors engineers that like to solve hard problems, um, and I'm talking about real world problems. Um, if they, it does not favor the kind of engineer who sees himself as just a coder that takes a
Yeah.
ticket
Yeah.
and you know produces 30 lines of code per day, and then runs the unit test, and then moves on without understanding why they're doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
This actually this new world empowers the kind of engineer that really is connected to the problem they're solving. And we happen to be in a company where everyone is driven by our mission to
Mhm.
prevent 1 million injuries over the next 10 years. And they all understand how the work they're doing links to that.
Mhm.
And and the I think so. I think being able to build this fast actually reinforces that connection, because now you know you're shipping products all the time, literally like weekly. You're shipping major feature enhancements like weekly. We did a complete revamp of our underwriting workflow in 2 weeks with one front end engineer in the last this month actually. He understands deeply the power of the features that are incorporated into this new workflow. And um, I mean, the energy on the team with him and his boss and the underwriters that are involved in this is just like through the roof, right? So they're like they get to really feel the excitement of shipping things that people love quickly. Whereas the one like but there's definitely a class of what I call coders, not engineers, that maybe we're always sort of more disconnected from the product and the user, and I think that there's less and less need for that. Um, there's another kind of engineer that I also want to talk about too, and I think it's an interesting topic these days. Um, the recent grad. A lot of people suggest that AI is taking jobs from recent grads, and frankly, I don't know what the economics say. I think it's probably too early to see it in the actual economics. But a lot of people might have read recently about all the jeers and boos at the commencement addresses, college commencement addresses in the last couple of weeks when I think it was Eric Schmidt, former CEO of Google, was speaking about AI and um, encouraging recent grads to not just assume that the future's been written in AI, but to take action, to participate in it, and to have agency. Um, I think there are a lot of recent grads that are worried that you don't need the new engineer anymore because they like the junior engineer because AI can do all of that. I think it's the exact opposite. We're actually able to we're able to hire people right out of college, sometimes a master's, sometimes out of undergrad, and get tremendous value out of them. As long as they can think, as long as they're like, they understand the higher level problem that we're trying to solve. And we the last thing we would do is give them like low level tickets or, ask them to just do testing or something like that. But we can give them very high level problems, and they can work with Claude. And if they've been if they've been awake for the last couple of years, they've been using these tools in all their classes.
Mhm.
These people can like the people we're hiring can be incredibly productive. We can pair them with an underwriter, or we can pair them
Mhm.
with a loss control person, and together they can make something pretty incrable. So
Mhm.
I'm actually really encouraged for the new grads and the opportunity there. I think it actually creates more demand for them. At least it does here at CompScience.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm gonna I'll echo it back to Josh again. I mean, he's very new in the business, and it's really interesting watching him work because he's comfortable. And I
Hmm.
don't, and that's I'm someone that likes to play around with these things as well. So it's quite funny. And actually, all of my team are embracing it. But you
Hmm.
just see him. It's almost like climbing. Like I like to do a bit of climbing, wall climbing, and you just
So do
see
I.
people solve the problems in different ways depending on
Hmm.
their strengths and
Yeah.
it's a bit like watching that in motion. It's like, right, I
Yeah.
I might have a bigger network and I have like more contacts and more
Hmm.
context, but he might be able to find the information differently. So it's
Yeah.
I agree with you. I'm positive about it.
Yeah.
Um,
I think it's the same for underwriters too.
yeah.
One thing that's been, so we're a completely remote company.
Hmm.
And I've, um, one thing that's on my mind is how do we maintain cohesion? How do we move quickly and develop people in a remote environment? I think about like how do you develop junior underwriters? And I actually think one thing that's really cool here is the software now can actually coach people. It can actually distill knowledge about the risks that we're underwriting and help them think at a higher level about what it is that what are the risks that they're binding. And it's not like you just kind of assume that they're going to figure it out with the AI or anything like that. We have a review process. So, but the level of the thinking that they're putting in to these underwriting notes is much higher than you would expect otherwise. So that when they go and have that referral conversation with the more senior underwriters, they're actually talking at a different level. So I think it actually it's not just the engineers, I guess is my point. It's people
No.
across the org that are able to develop faster and have impact earlier.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly the way I look at it in a
Hmm.
positive light.
Yeah.
I'm really conscious of time. Actually, we're already at time. But I did want to ask
What
you about.
happened?
But I know this is what happens when we get carried away. So I did want to ask you about the road ahead because you work at this brilliant intersection of AI and insurance.
Yeah.
So I wanted to sort of say, in broad strokes, what
Hmm.
excites you about that intersection that we
Yeah.
maybe have not yet to see. And then, we're talking about managing risk.
Hmm.
What risks do you think there might be for the industry that they're perhaps not paying enough attention to?
That's interesting. I mean, I think the thing that excites me is just that we can get so much more sophisticated in understanding the risks that we're underwriting.
Yeah,
We can pull the underwriters, the account managers, the loss control people out of the sort of tedium um, uh, around like document processing and uploading and manual data entry and you know audits and things like that, and really they can spend much more of their time in the relationship building and in the higher level thinking. Um, now, you do that by creating like an agentic end-to-end system. That is a system that operates towards a goal. That's kind of that's the where the world's going essentially is these software systems aren't just going to respond to your requests. They're going to have objectives. They're going to operate in continuous loops, and they're going to let you know when they need someone to sign off. Um, that's sort of the governance element of it, which is a very important element of product development now. Is like what is the human governance to know that the system is operating correctly? Because in the end, someone's responsible. Not the system can't be responsible for itself, right? So that's something that's going to drive incredible improvement in the expense ratios in this industry, but also it's going to allow us to drive much more effective loss control because we will know the risks better. We'll be able to incorporate the right binding subjectivities into the contracts we sign, and also be much more consultative in the risk services. So I really do believe this is going to be the most disrupted industry of all, beyond perhaps coding itself,
yeah,
which has already seen a massive disruption, of course. But this is real world risks. What's special about this industry is we're looking at real world risks, very sophisticated, very complex real world risks that you've never had much and nearly enough data about to understand deeply when you're underwriting them, and now you really can.
yeah.
Um, I think there are risks. What are the risks? There's certainly regulatory risks. That's probably the one I'm most concerned with is that we start to try to regulate these AI models before we truly understand them. I think we're barely in the first inning. I think we've got like the first batter up right now
Hmm.
in
Hmm.
this world, and there's talk about requiring every major model to be uh, vetted by the U.S. government before it's released, almost like the FDA works with drug trials. That would What that would do is make the U.S. tech players uncompetitive in the world market. Exactly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
That's the biggest risk, if you ask me. Um, Making like really, really kind of slowing down the ability to create better and better models that can understand the world better and help us make better
Mm,
decisions.
mm.
I think it's a real risk. I think it's unlikely still right now, but you never know where this there's been a lot of anti-AI headlines out there recently. Anti-data center,
Yep.
um, anti-AI because of job displacement, and I think
Mm.
that it's generally misunderstandings. Like people say, data centers and AI is going to consume all the water. Um, it's when you look at the actual numbers, the numbers are it's like maybe about a 15th of a teaspoon of water used for every ChatGPT query. It's not
Yeah.
actually that meaningful. In aggregate, yes, it might be a big number, but um, anyway, there's a lot of misinformation out there, and
Yeah.
I think we need to be really we need to have proactive education about the
Mm.
realities of what AI is, the impacts it has, and educate people so that they're prepared for um, a world where it is actually pretty free to disseminate very convincing ideas.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah.
I was talking to some friends about it last night from different industries, and I said,
Hmm.
I feel like I'm watching some people treat this like, like I'm old enough to be like the internet didn't exist and then it did, and people were like,
Hmm.
oh, it'll blow over, or it's like, no, no, the
Sounds like a
train has
fad.
left the station. Just get on board, otherwise we'll be left behind. Josh,
Yeah.
brilliant conversation. Knew it would
Yeah.
be. You've got such a great background to have this conversation, and usually we're
My
pushing
pleasure.
people. We've got people that are pushing AI products, but you're
Hmm.
integrating AI into business, so it was really helpful for me. So thank you for that.
You
Thank
got
you
it.
once again for being a guest on the Leadership and Insurance podcast.
Thanks for having me. Great to see you again, Alex, and looking forward to working with you again soon.
Thanks, my friend.
All
Cheers.
right.